Gravity Falls, a show of humor, mystery, and casual viewing. Unless you're me. My name is Christian. You're probably wondering why I'm dressed as Tipper Pines and about to rewatch the entire series. Rest assured, there's a perfectly logical explanation.
Alright, now we finally get into Dreamscaperers, and this is a two-part finale for Season 1. And I'm planning to get the payoff for a bunch of storylines that we set up for Season 1. And the main premise for the episode is that Gideon Gleeful is trying to find the deed to the Mystery Shack because he believes that the shack holds some kind of ultimate power that he could use. We start the episode with Dipper and Mabel playing a game in the attic, and then Stan calls him downstairs to make fun of Gideon Gleeful's latest commercial. And the gang proceeds to talk about their past experience and mutual dislike for Gideon. So while the Pines family is distracted, he breaks into Stan's office and tries to break into the safe, but then Stan catches him and then kicks him out. And Gideon pretty much says that's the last straw, so he decides to turn to journal number 2. And in that, we kind of get the first real image of the Bill Cipher Zodiac, which was hinted at the very end of the theme song. Kind of get that little flash of that image of the character of Bill Cipher, who's like a triangle character with a top hat and one eye and a bow tie, and he's surrounded by all these different symbols, a lot of symbols that we've already seen throughout the series, like the pine tree for Dipper, the shooting star for Mabel, the question mark for Seuss, the holy mackerel for Stan, the heart with the stitch in it for Robbie. We also get the star of the Tent of Telepathy, and the bad advice that we saw in the Inconveniencing and the Time Traveler's Pig, and a couple other symbols that we've seen throughout the series as well. So then he does this incantation and then summons Bill Cipher, and Bill Cipher is basically a dream demon from the Nightmare Realm who can infiltrate people's dreams and try to find out their secrets. Also in the scene where Gideon's first encountering Bill moves close to Gideon and says, "Lots of things." And you can see random symbols flashing on him. We see the broken arm of the Gideon bot that we'll see in the next episode, and the Gravity Falls maximum security prison that we'll see in several episodes of Season 2. Also when Bill turns around and says, "Stan Pines," an image of Stan's tattoo appears. So then Gideon makes a deal with Bill in order to infiltrate Stan's mind and then discover the secret to the safe. So then Bill possesses Stan while he's asleep, and then Dipper, Mabel, and Seuss decide to go into Stan's mind in order to stop Bill and save Stan. But then there's this also kind of B story of Dipper kind of being in conflict with Stan because Stan just thinks he's kind of like a wimp, and Dipper's like upset with that. He's like always trying to prove himself, so he's kind of going into it kind of reluctantly, but he knows that deep down he's still his uncle, so he has to try to find a way to save him. So they finally go into Stan's mind, and then we get like a bunch of different Easter eggs and references to like past episodes. We get a bunch of like Stan's memories. It's reestablished that Stan is the secret behind the vending machine. We also get a couple more of Stan's memories, including a memory of him in a Colombian prison, him as a door-to-door salesman, and him on a date with Lazy Susan that's not going well. We get a memory of him as a child and him being bullied by a bully named Krempelter, who will be referenced a lot in Season 2, and how Stan's dad, Filbert Pines, which gets revealed later on in the series, wanted him to be a man and everything, so he kind of signed him up for boxing lessons, and then, Stan kind of used that to fight against a robber who was trying to take the purse of his then girlfriend named Carla McCorkle, who's a character who gets mentioned kind of throughout the early part of the series and kind of become the character that he is now. Also in the background of the memory of Stan's boxing lessons, we see a character sitting on the bench holding a book covering their face. Will definitely be someone important later down the line. And then we also get the return of Kraz and Zyler, who are Mabel's dream boys, and they kind of like tag along on Dipper, Mabel, and Seuss's adventures throughout Stan's mindscape. And we also get an image of a swing set, which will become really important in the next season. One that has a normal swing and the one with a broken swing, hinting at some kind of relationship that Stan had in the past that became broken. So again, kind of hinting at this kind of like alternate history that Stan has that'll definitely become more relevant in future episodes. So the characters kind of get separated. Dipper kind of like confronts Stan. Earlier in the episode, Dipper kind of overhears like one of the memories of Stan talking to Seuss about how Dipper's a wimp, so he feels bad about it and doesn't see the rest of the memory. Then later on, he comes back and sees the rest of the memory, and Stan admits that Dipper kind of reminds of him as a child and how he just wants to toughen Dipper up to be able to stand up for himself. So then Dipper feels inspired by that, and Stan kind of brings up the fact that in the mind state you can kind of do whatever you want, so that kind of becomes helpful for Dipper later down the line, where we get to the other story where Bill Cipher actually finds the memory with the combination to the safe, but then the heroes kind of blast the memory out of his hand and ends up in the bottomless pit. Gideon kind of brings an end to the deal and cuts ties with Bill, so then Bill becomes upset and then kind of like challenges them to a battle and kind of like torturing them and making them experience like their worst fears. But then Dipper comes to save the day and then tells them that in the mindscape you can kind of do whatever you want. So then they kind of fight against Bill, and during the battle with Bill, we get a couple of Easter eggs with Mabel, where she revisits her dream of human-sized hamster balls. Also, when she creates kittens for fists, will be referenced in a future episode. And then Bill kind of says like, enough, like stops everything, and then kind of like ends the battle in a stalemate and says like, I'm going to keep you guys alive because you guys might be important later. So definitely hinting at kind of like his end game for the end of the series, and kind of hinting at that he may be the main antagonist of the entire series. So I think that was a really good Easter egg for sure. So he kind of ends everything. They prevent him from stealing the memory. Stan wakes up, they wake up back in the Mystery Shack, everything seems all good, Dipper feels better about Stan, gives him a hug and everything. And then, right when you think everything's all good, they hear like a crash, and then a hole breaks into the wall, and then Gideon walks in, the Pines family are like, what are you doing? And then Gideon reveals that he has the deed to the Mystery Shack and that it belongs to him because of like the Finders Keepers law that gets introduced in the next episode of like, if you steal a deed to the house, then automatically you own it. So, guess Gravity Falls logic there. So he ends up taking over the Mystery Shack, and then, kind of ends in kind of like an all is lost moment. And, we kind of cut to the credits where there's like a to be continued. And then obviously that'll get resolved in the next episode, part 2 of the finale. We also get a couple cryptograms in the episode. In Stan's Mindscape version of the Mystery Shack, it has a sign over the main entrance, which in the Caesar cipher gets translated to Mystery Shack. Also, there's a piccolo machine with a message written on it. And if you use the Caesar cipher, it says pit. And on the top of the Dreamscape Mystery Shack, there's a sign written above it. And once decoded, it says mist. But instead of using the 3 letters back like most of the show, it's decoded only using 2 letters back. We also get a cryptogram at the end, which is translated to be continued, which is already translated during the end screen, so I'm not sure why they have that. And the original cryptogram was actually supposed to be next week's Tyler and Kraz's Boat Excellent Red Adventure, which I'm sure is a reference to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And finally, in the yellow behind Bill Cipher's name, there's another secret message which translates to Liar Monster Snappy Dresser. Overall, yeah, this is a really fun episode, very imaginative, very funny, a lot of humor, a lot of tension, and yeah, definitely introducing a lot of main characters and a lot of different storylines that'll definitely be important for the rest of the series for sure.